deal with airplane peanuts?
I'm going to dinner now, but it's going to be a sensible portion, so I don't get all super fat like my dear friend Bert. The end. I finished Tom Segura's book today. I'd like to play Alone, please. And in this video, we're going to share some highlights with you, tell you my thoughts on the book. But first, please subscribe to Joke World right now if you're a fan of comedy, if you're a fan of Tom Segura, if you have a good sense of humor. If you don't subscribe right now, I assume you have a terrible sense of humor and you hope Tom dies in a horrible accident and you want him to stop doing stand-up. So subscribe. It's called I'd Like to Play Alone, Please, and you find out why that's the title during the book, but it opened up number 2 on the New York Times bestsellers list, which is pretty cool for Tom to be able to do. And if you're looking for like a biography, autobiography about his life, he says this is not what it is. It's 224 pages long, broken up into 24 different chapters, and each chapter is about just a different cool story in his life, a memorable moment in his life.
Yeah, this is not a memoir. It's not an autobiography. This is a collection of stories and essays. And it's an extension of what I do as a comedian, which is I tell stories a lot.
It's funny that he doesn't describe it as an autobiography or that he went out of his way to say that it wasn't, because although it's not, a linear story of this is where he was born and, his career moving forward, just the stories that he does share with you, some are from his childhood, some are from high school, college age, early comedy, late comedy, recently, being a father. So it does take you through his whole life just in funny story form, which is pretty cool. So you do get a little bit of a biography about Tom Segura from this book. I'm also a big fan of the cover art. I think it pops, it stands out. And then he has 3 forewords on the back, 3 other comedians that wrote a little note about his book: Jon Stewart, Ali Wong, and then Joe Rogan. This is what Joe had to say about the book and about Tom. Tom Segura is a great guy, an amazing friend, and a limitless well of hilarious stories. He has an appreciation for the absurdity of life that borders on mental illness. This book is a window into his beautifully fucked up mind, where some of the dumbest people and the ridiculous things they do take center stage, all masterfully animated by one of the best stand-up comics on earth. He's my favorite kind of comic because his take on life is legitimately therapeutic. His enthusiasm for stupid shit is so contagious that it actually changes your mood and convinces you to join him in his way of seeing it. I love him to death, and his book is fucking awesome. That's what Joe Rogan had to say about the book, and I pretty much agree. I mean, besides the personal notes about their friendship, I agree that the book is fucking awesome. Tom also recorded an audio version of this book that you can purchase and download. And looking back, I kind of wish I would have done that. I feel like I would have got through the book a lot faster because it would have just sounded like listening to one of his podcasts, basically. Him reading these funny stories, his voice. But the funny thing about the hardcover is about actually reading it is while you're reading these stories and while you're reading his writing, it sounds so much like him, like it's his voice in your head, which is kind of cool. Most books that you read, you haven't heard the author do thousands of hours of podcasts and him talking over and over. So Tom's voice, and reading this book, every chapter comes off as his voice in your head. So I would kind of recommend doing the audio version. I think Tom himself said that he recommends the audio version for podcast fans, but reading it was pretty cool, and I'm happy that I have the physical souvenir too.
Now I'm doing the audio book, which is, you don't realize it, but it's a performance. You're actually performing. The original plan is that I would have to go to a studio somewhere here in Austin or when I was on the road in LA, and I was like, nah. I'm just way more comfortable recording in my own studio. I feel really at ease. I look over in the booth, I see you guys who I'm super comfortable and familiar with, and it just feels like at home. So I think it's a much better audio recording because of that, as opposed to being in some space I've never been to with engineers I don't know. I think it's been a lot better to be this way.
Most of the chapters end with a picture, and then he also has a photo essay in here, which is pretty cool. Some of my favorite stories from this that you would probably recognize are the wallet story and the Mike Tyson story, his relationship with Mike Tyson. That's how he closes the book. It's actually one of the longer chapters. And there's details of the story that in this version that you don't hear about in his on-stage version. That's pretty cool to hear about. There's also a chapter about how he started podcasting, about how he started gaining more tickets on the road, and kind of how his comedy career progressed, how he ended up on Netflix. Just really cool if you're a fan of Tom, if you've been following him for a while, or even if you're a new fan and you want to learn about his career in the past. Definitely recommend grabbing this book. I like the chapters that he mentions his other friends in comedy because you kind of get to see, behind the scenes of their relationship. And we're a fan of, a lot of these guys like Ryan Sickler, Joe Rogan, Bert, obviously Christina P. So like this is a cool book for just comedy nerds, fans of other comedians that are in Tom's circle as well. If you've also read this book or listened to the audiobook, comment your favorite chapter for me, because I'm very curious to hear what other people's favorite chapters are. Mine was the Serena Williams one by a landslide. I did not realize how in-depth or how many different parts of that story there were. Like, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but that's hilarious. There were a lot of good, funny stories in this book, but Serena Williams is my favorite chapter. If you've read the book, please comment what yours was. Most of these stories and most of these chapters are about people that he randomly sat next to on airplanes, like randomly sitting next to celebrities on airplanes and their weird, funny conversations. And it's just so wild. I get that he flies all the time, like comedians are always flying, but it's just so crazy that he could literally write a book, literally did write a book just based on like celebrities that he's randomly sat next to on airplanes. It's great stuff. I definitely recommend checking it out. I am a little bit surprised, though, that there's not a chapter of his most famous, legendary podcast moment of all time that I think we all can agree on, which is this one.
At Joke World. That's who did
That's
it. At
amazing.
Joke World. And the world is WRLD.
He
cut this for over like 4 minutes.
I love it, and he really overlapped your reactions to like, yeah, and,
Yeah.
it's so good.
But in all seriousness, it's a great book. Definitely go check it out. Tom Segura, I'd like to play alone, please. That's it for this video. Short book review today. Please subscribe to Joke World. Follow us on Instagram. We'll send you free stickers. I'll see you again Monday for the Comedy World news update that we do every single Monday, bringing you the comedy news.